Hello and welcome to part 2 of my tutorial where we dive into setting up a scene for good Lightmap baking in Godot 4. In this section we'll be taking our previously made scene into Godot, discussing common issues and pitfalls, updating our 3D models, discussing optimal baking settings, and finally we'll be baking our scene Lightmap. If you haven't already, be sure to check out part 1 of the tutorial where we model the scene from the ground up in Blender. And without further ado, let's get into it. I'm actually just going to create a folder first, just call it models, just so there's a little bit of organizing going on. I'm also going to create a folder called data for our Lightmap data. Alright, so let's drag in the church scene. Alright, importing scene. So our scene is in there. Let's create a 3D scene on the hierarchy here, a node 3D, and we'll call this the usual main. We'll save it. Well, we don't even need to set that as a run scene because we're not going to be running this project. But we're now ready. I'm not going to make the GLB its own inherited scene because that's just an extra layer of stuff that isn't actually important. We can actually just drop it in right now. Alright, so here's our church. Our textures seem well enough. We can already see some light leaking through on our support beams, our rafters, because we have a single plane roof mesh. And we can see the light leaking through on the walls as well for that very same reason. Our long windows look fine. This is not correct. This has the church material on it. We can set that over here, right here in Godot, but seeing as though we already have to go back to the Blender session, we'll take care of that in Blender. This is interesting. We have a glass. Is this all of them? Yeah, it's pretty much all of them. Our window frames and our glass panes are both the glass material, which should not be. So we're going to have to go in and take care of that. Yeah. So as you can see, we have the environment light leaking in through there. Is it sunlight as well? It's actually sunlight. If I toggle the sunlight, we can see it's the sunlight that's actually bleeding through. And honestly, the environment light is bleeding through as well, because it just should not be affecting anything inside here at all. Anything else that we need to take care of back in Blender? This is alright, that's fine. The door is fine. So it's just the rafters, the glass material. Why does this look like a door? Okay, is this entire thing, like there's no glass material being used here. Our lights, they didn't make it into the import. So let's go ahead and just add Omni lights. At each of the bulbs, locations, set up shadows. Well, that's interesting. We have no light effects with shadow. That's because they're inside of the bulb, actually. So we actually do need to just move them both down outside. There we go. And we will get that shadowing on the roof due to the bulbs themselves, which should not be casting shadows. Let's take care of that right now. Alright, everything else can cast shadows, but those should not be casting shadows. Alright, so we have nice shadowing stuff going on here. Alright, so let's go back into Blender and fix some of these textures. Okay, so we're back in Blender, and we have just a few, let's call them repairs to take care of. First is take care of sealing up the roof so that there is no light leak. This should be relatively simple, but it's going to be actually just a little bit more complicated than we might think. What we can do is just select these. Extrude these upwards, like so. You can actually fill. So we can fill that. And then we can come over here and fill this guy here. As for which direction our normals will be faced, it's okay for them to be regular. They don't have to be back, well, they should not be back faced, so as we can see here, they are. So let's select these two faces and flip them, because this is effectively a sealed mesh. And that should take care of our light leak problem. Now we just have one more problem to take care of, but it seems as though my computer's slowing down a little bit, so I'm going to maybe close Godot and jump right back in. Okay, so I'm just going to show you a really quick way to take care of all the materials really quickly. You're going to start by selecting one of the windows. It's on this first slot. We're just going to change it right here to the window frame first, so that the default material for this object is window frame matte. Then we're going to add the glass matte as a secondary, and we're not going to assign it yet. After we do this, we're going to stay in object mode, hold shift and select all of the windows that we want to affect, and then lastly select the first one that has both the materials on it, so that this is the target object. Then you hit Control L, link materials. Alright, so now all of the selected objects have the same material setup. Now what we're going to do is we're going to hit Tab with all these objects selected. We're going to hit Tab and go into Edit mode, go into Face Select mode, and we're just going to select all of the faces, i.e. the glass panes that we want to set as glass. Select Glass Matte and hit Assign. So now our windows are fully set up. Alright, and that should be it. While I'm at it, for these faces here on the church, let's assign them a material. Pulpit might actually be good. We may also need to unwrap it. Cube projection. So that's kind of alright. What I'll do is select... I'll go back in and select all of these newer faces that we created. And I will assign them pulpit. And I'll hit unwrap and do cube projection. So we have a nice sort of wooden roof. It's not the best, but the focus of this scene is everything that's happening on the inside. But seeing as we did expand the entire roof layer, I want to bring this cross a little bit higher. So let's select the rafters, hit Tab, select these faces. I'm going to hit X-ray just so I can grab all of them. I'm just going to move it up just a little bit higher. I want to go just a little bit higher than that on the Z-axis. There we go. That's fine for now. And we should be ready. We have our pew that has the correct material now, so we're ready to re-import. There we go. Everything looks nice and clean and ready for the baking. Let's see how these lights are performing in here. Yeah, very natural. One of the things that we actually do need to do before we bake is get the is to realize the world environment and the directional sun. I am going to leave them as is, hit add environment to scene, and add sun to scene, right? So now they are editable, or they're accessible by the Lightmap GI node. This all seems great. Let me see how things look. All right, yeah, so we don't have any more light leakage or anything like that going on. And these block glass windows look great. Everything looks good to bake. I'm going to load up a Lightmap Geo node right here in this collection node. We can just call this, well, I guess we can't actually rename this right now, right? I have to, yeah. So let's just add the node, Lightmap GI. We can leave this right here, or we can do what I like to do, which is just center it. I really don't think this is a necessary step, but it's something I like to do. And let's just focus on it here so it can be inside when it happens. One thing that you do need to do before you start baking anything is that you need to make sure the mesh has unwrapped an unwrapped UV2 for the light mapping process to use. You can't usually do that directly. You have to do it on import or re-import. And the way you do that is you go into it, you select the raw GLB, you hit advanced, and you go through and you select each of the raw sort of mesh data. That's going to be the white boxes, and you're going to make sure that Lightmap UV, where it says generate, is set to enable. All right, so we have to go through and set all of these up. And I'm going to show you what's going to happen if you don't do this. So I'm just going to stop right here and give everything a little bake through. I'm going to go to scene, select my Lightmap GI, I'm going to put bake lights. All right. So I intentionally left these two objects out of the UV2 unwrap process. So you can see that the Lightmap GI node completely ignores them, while it does, you know, whatever kind of a job of baking it does on everything else. All right. FYI, this is really bad baking, but we haven't begun to tweak the settings yet. So without further ado, let me just go back in the re-import and select the stair and the stage. Enable, stair, enable, make sure this one's enabled as well, hit re-import. Let's go back into, okay, so yeah. Now, let's go tweak our bake. I personally like to leave the quality at medium, and I'll tell you why as we go on. Super sampling as well, I find that to be unnecessary. Bounces, however, are critically important. Bouncing light is essentially what we're here for and what we're here to do, and you will find that the more bounces you add, the more natural, the more detailed things get. The sweet spot that I've found is between 5 and 8 bounces, so I'm going to leave it at 8. The intensity of the bounce indirect energy, we're going to just leave that at where it is. You're going to want to toggle directional on. It accounts for more things like normals and whatnot. Everything else you're going to kind of leave as is. All right, we're going to leave the denoiser on and leave its settings as is. Texel scale is another thing that's going to bring up pure detail. It's the only thing that I use to sort of dial up detail in terms of the size and resolution of the light map. Light maps definitely get very big very quick when you talk about like changing quality up to high and ultra and then adding super sampling. It makes for a very big file output, etc. That I think is unnecessary when it comes to adding like artistic and pleasing results, like realistic results even. You really don't need a lot of resolution, but you need accuracy. Sometimes you might need to increase resolution for accuracy, and that's where texel scale comes in, because every time this number goes up, you kind of just double the texel resolution. All right, so that's where I like to leave things at. So let's run this bake again and see what we get. You'll notice that it's going to take like a lot longer to complete. Alright, so as we can see, our scene is now beginning to look a lot more realistic. Especially with our dynamic lights in there. We do have like some posterization going on here in the extremely dark areas. I'm not too sure that's actually 100% related to the bake, but we're definitely only seeing it when the bake is there. So yeah. Okay, so I've managed to fix the posterization artifacts completely by simply switching to the forward plus renderer. One thing I didn't take into account was that when I made the original Artifact 39 scene, that was in a VR formatted project, meaning I was using spatial shaders that were meant for VR on top of it being the mobile plus renderer. So automatically I thought that just starting a regular mobile renderer project would render the same results, but it turns out there's a lot of posterization in the shadows if you're just using the regular mobile renderer setup. So switching to Forward Plus effectively completely got rid of all shadowing artifacts, and it actually looks incredibly clean. But it introduced one more problem. Our windows are now black. Not all of them, because I intentionally left the long windows as well as the circular window panes out of the UV2 unwrapping process on the re-import. And it looks like that's what we're going to need to do for these window panes as well, unfortunately. Of course, we can just do that, make them completely, what's the word? We can also leave them out of the baking cycle by not having them be visible, I believe. Let's try this first. That looks a little bit better. You can tell that there would need to be some shadowing happening around the frame, but that's alright. I'm also going to just hide some of these gizmos in here so we can get a nice clean look at everything. The color on this cross on the secondary material I don't like. What I'm going to do, the gold accent, yeah. I'm going to paste that in there real quick. Godot. I want it to be more of an orange. A deep orange, gold, fiery orange. There we go. Yeah, so this is a very clean baking. Some nice hard shadows from our spotlights, and if I take them off, you'll notice just how awesomely they come out. They participate in the bake, I should say. Just select away there. Very natural. All of the ambient occlusion looks very good. And again, this is medium quality. One thing that looks really nice is, for instance, let's say we have the lights on. If you notice how the floor looks a little bit flat right now in terms of surface texture. If we go in and we grab the floor texture and we just adjust some of either the metallic. Actually, no, let's go into roughness. There we go, make it a little bit more pronounced. You can actually get a really nice realistic feel. Of course, you know it's a balance. Let's see if we take this light out. See how this makes, oof, that's so good. Yeah, so real quickly, let me just rotate the texture on these pews. That's, okay, that's a lot better. Also, texturing on our rafters is a lot better too, because it's sharing that material. All in all, we have a nice detailed bake. Now, where baking gets really fun is when you start playing with lighting parameters. Let's do that thing where we get the sun to come around through little sky window there to be basically dead on. And we should see that reflected in our little thing there. You can also just increase its height in the sky to bring the shadow down a little bit. That's kind of cool. I like that. That kind of says a lot right there. These lights also, they're very white when they should probably be just a little bit, not totally white, a little bit amber. And I'm just going to copy this. I think also I might have taken the shadows off while I was troubleshooting the shadow fringing. Yeah, so we definitely want to keep the shadows on these bad boys on. Alright, so we get those nice shadows back up there and right here. I'm going to run one more bake and see if anything changes. So it's interesting to see that we just don't have to do this process in the mobile renderer, but for Plus, we need to. I can't begin to think about why that is, but important to note about Godot's process. Now that we have effectively a nice sort of saturated, warm look, I wonder what another tone mapping might look like. Very strong, very rich, very bold, very ominous, cinematic, even AGX, yeah, very Unreal Engine. Very Unreal Engine. Yeah, if you want the Unreal Engine look, just use the AGX tone mapper. That's really all it is. Linear's good, you know, if you're doing a sort of neutral mood. AGX is, yeah, a little bit more intense. But yeah, so we have our church. Now let's see if I can get away with... I'm pretty much going to have to group those windows. It's probably a good idea to group the windows at this point, because if I have to disable them every time I bake, that's just going to be a nightmare. Also, the sun's light should be warmer. I kind of like that sort of reddish tint in there, and that feels so natural. Okay, so now that we're back in Blender, let's just go ahead and select these windows. Let's get right to it. Select every one of them. Now we're going to tab into edit mode. Select face select. We'll select each and every one of these faces. Now we're going to right click and hit separate by selection. We should have a bunch of these lovely panes here. And what we can do is so we actually have to select them outside of their hierarchy. Oops. And now we can hit Control J and make it one wonderful object. Which is it, this one? Yes. I'm going to call it glass panes. The way to do this, I suppose, is to unparent, clear parent, with keeping transform. Let's see what we can do about the unwrapping for this guy here. Somehow I don't think we're going to be able to do very much without applying this modifier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this object. I'm just going to hide this one so it never makes it into the export, and for the original one, well, not the, I'm going to hide the original one actually, and I'm going to apply a modifier for this one, just like that. Now I'm going to UV unwrap it. I have to tab into edit mode, hit A to select all, EU to UV unwrap, and I think cube projection works pretty well. I think cube projection worked really well. So let's export everything one last time back into Godot. But let's run a nice high quality bake now. Alright, we can see that high quality bakes definitely take a lot longer than medium. Alright. Very cool. Very realistic. Some really lovely normals going on. See, we did do some nice beveling work on the pulpit, so you can really see some nice detail in there. I should have, oh yeah, we have some nice normal details on the cross as well. That's standing out, so do on the bricks. The interior unwrap on the bricks is laughable, but that's what I was saying. And we can call it that. No, that's interesting. We don't have to bake again, actually. So yeah, man, this is pretty cool, I'd say. I like it. It's got something to it. Those lights are triggering me for some reason. These light bulbs are triggering me. Let's not let them hang down too low. And whatever that glass material is, oh well, that actually looks a little bit better. They're just kind of just particular. I've never seen glass bulbs like this before in my life. We'd do a lot better too. Oof, look at this. Look at the blending that's going on here. This is really nice. Yeah, we do a lot better with like some artisan bulbs with a nice like detailed filament and whatnot, but ain't nobody got time for that. So without further ado, guys, I hope you learned something about light baking in Blender, in Godot, while modeling for light baking in Blender. Always double up your meshes so that the back faces face each other inside. Understand that when you have intersections or clipping, that's actually fine. You won't get bleed as long as the meshes are each themselves sealed up. Single face panels can be tricky when it comes to baking, and you kind of just want to keep them separate by themselves for the most part. And avoid flipped normals. Notice that we have no, yeah, maybe I should have left a couple of them flipped so that you could see the damage that they do, but just take my word for it, it's not something you ever want to encounter. It's really scary stuff. And yeah, that's about it. You know, if your glass is like single face panel, well, ideally you want to make your glass material single face panel, or you know, you can double up, but unless you know some sort of light transmission trick that I don't, you're going to completely block out the rays during the process of baking. So it's probably a good idea to keep glass panes as single face panels and then completely omit them from the baking process. You can do that with a manifold mesh as well, and then shade it however you want as well. But if you don't want to go through all of that, you can just do simple glass like this, and maybe just go in and make the shader more exciting, add in some sort of like anything you want really. So there you have it, a really nice bake. I feel like I could have made it so much more dynamic, and you know, you can, the more you add. Okay, I'm not going to leave it off here. I'm not going to go out like that. I need something much more dynamic than this. So let's duplicate this light. Okay guys, so I told you I was not going out like that. I ain't going out like no sucker. So yeah, I added a little bit of volumetric fog, added my little blue omni light outside, and I changed my tone map from that flat AGX to Aces. And now we have a very sort of AAA looking environment here, if I don't say so myself. We even have a little bit of God rays going on here at the mosaic window, just a little bit, you can see punching through. But this is totally rad. Totally rad. If I pull back the light baking, boop, totally flat. So yeah, that's the power of good light baking and setting up your scene to bake well, to bake clean with no leaks and no flip normals. You can get some pretty outstanding results out of Godot with, minimal effort, just a little bit of knowledge. And I do believe this is a... Okay, so this is a high quality bake, as in the quality is set to high. Normals look so fantastic. Alright guys, so that's it for this sort of deep dive tutorial. I will say over and out. I'd love to see what you guys do with it. I will be publishing this scene on GitHub as is, just as you see it, open source, so you guys can do whatever you want to do with it. So yeah, I took you to church. You can say I took you to church. Over and out, guys. Take care.